Their brand of Islamic thought has worried even some devout Muslims.
The Taliban today have banned women from offices. They have said they are to cover up.
Actually, what they said we want to establish segregation between male and female.
Come on. The reality is the Taliban, for example, would forbid women to be educated. Now, you know very well that it is, no, let me speak. It is fundamental in Islam that education is incumbent on male and female.
I think this is stereotype and Islamophobia against Islam. We should forget it.
No. I mean, really, one mustn't accuse a Muslim of Islamophobia.
But then Afghanistan is far away, thinly populated, so perhaps such an administration will have little consequence beyond its border. Good evening. Two very different conflicts dominate tonight's news, both with profound implications for world peace. The Palestinian-Israeli fighting, some of the worst for decades, has claimed 7 more Palestinian and 3 more Israeli lives and defiled one of Islam's holiest shrines on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Despite calls from the world's key foreign ministers gathered at the United Nations, there has been no constructive talk in the region itself. The other huge development is the fall of the Afghan capital to Taliban. The international community has feared the takeover of this remote state for decades, and now fears where the Taliban's success will lead. We shall be debating Islam's reaction and the implications for the world's other Islamic states. Now, the Taliban Islamic faction has taken control of the Afghan capital, Kabul. The rebels, who now control much of the country, overran the city after government forces abandoned it overnight. Immediately, they imposed strict Islamic law. They also executed former President Najibullah, seen as a collaborator under the Soviet occupation, leaving his body hanging in a street. The exact whereabouts of the current president, Bahruddin Rabbani, are unknown. Sarah Shah reports now on the fall of Kabul and assesses the chances for peace under Taliban rule.
The Taliban forces seeking to impose a stringent Islamic regime have targeted Kabul for over a year. Overnight, as government troops withdrew to the hills above the city, they entered the ruined capital almost unopposed. Today they appealed to the international community for recognition, hours after they had dragged the former communist president, Dr Najibullah, from the UN compound that was sheltering him.
They hauled him out of the UN compound and took him to the presidential palace, which had been abandoned by the government, and he was beaten, and there were several bullet wounds to his lower body. I saw the corpse hanging this morning outside the presidential palace.
As the United Nations condemned the killing, the Red Cross said it had already held negotiations with Taliban commanders to allow food convoys into the city.
Our head of delegation managed to meet this morning with the commander of the Taliban forces who took the city. He reiterated all security guarantees. We are actually working on a convoy of 35 trucks which are expected to leave from our logistic base in Peshawar on Sunday with urgently needed food supplies.
The Taliban now control the southern half of the country. The former government has been pushed back into the mountains north of the capital to its traditional stronghold in the northeast. 2 warlords controlling northern and central regions have not yet allied themselves with either side. They could prove kingmakers. The Afghan chargé d'affaires in London is left with an embassy but not necessarily a country.
Diplomatic relations are the same, it hasn't changed. And occupation forces from Pakistan has come and it has grasped the power, it has grasped the city and their hands from the people of Afghanistan. So, of course, the situation at the moment is that we are preparing to defend and to defeat the invaders, and as we have done against the Russians, to defeat them.
Mr Massoud's brother, the former Mujahideen commander Ahmad Shah Massoud, who fought a Soviet occupation from the Panjshir Valley, may now be a guerrilla leader once more. The government, which swept into Kabul on a wave of optimism in 1992, said last night it made a strategic withdrawal from the capital to spare lives. In the capital, some of the Taliban's first actions were to ban women from offices and to urge ordinary men to grow beards as a sign of piety. Their brand of Islamic thought, honed in Quran schools on the Pakistan border, has worried even some devout Muslims.
Anyone who is contradicting that school of thought is contradicting Islam in their own idea. They do not really appreciate the multi-schools of thought in Islam itself.
Pakistan is accused of supporting the Taliban and is the only government to have recognised them. A new Sunni Islamic force in this most unstable region will upset another powerful neighbour, Shiite Iran. The West, which supported the Afghan Mujahideen for years, has already seen veterans it helped supply launch Islamic movements as far afield as Algeria and the Sudan. A reminder, if anyone needed, that Afghanistan's conflicts rarely stay within its physical borders.
Sarah Shah reporting. Well, what is so momentous about the developments in Afghanistan is not that it has become another Islamic state, it was that already, but the strict fundamentalist nature of the government that has ushered itself into power. But then Afghanistan is far away, thinly populated, so perhaps such an administration will have little consequence beyond its border. Is then the Taliban victory in Kabul an idiosyncratic one-off, or has it a message for the complex seam of Islamic states that weave across the northern hemisphere from Indonesia to Morocco? We're joined now by Dr Ghada Karmi, who's written extensively on Islam, and Sheikh Omar Bakri Muhammad, who's a lecturer at the London School of Sharia and who recently tried to organise an Islamic rally in London. Dr Ghada Karmi, first, you're a Palestinian, an Arab woman, a Muslim. You woke up this morning to the news that this fundamentalist group had seized Afghanistan. What was your reaction?
Well, I wasn't particularly surprised because in Afghanistan terms, the Taliban have had an irresistible rise to power. The situation of Afghanistan is so chaotic, has been so destroyed by the interference of outside states, particularly the West, particularly Americans, that it was created a vacuum, and it's not particularly surprising. I think it's regrettable in that the brand of Islam that these Taliban are practicing is backward-looking, it's an anachronism, and it's a type of Islam which I think most mainstream Muslims wouldn't even recognize as Islam.
Sheikh Omar, what was your reaction when you woke up and heard the news?
When I heard Taliban take over, I was very happy because the Muslims stopped fighting each other, and I heard as well that they give amnesty to the soldiers and they want to establish Islamic law, which is very good. On the third news, I heard that the Muslims worldwide, here in Britain, support the Mujahideen and support the Muslims in Afghanistan.
But let's just pick up particularly on what Dr Karmi said. Do you identify with this brand of Islam? She says it's backward-looking, and I mean the Sharia law, which involves terrible punishments for crimes.
I disagree because, first of all, never been implemented any Sharia law until now. That it was Muslim state, never was Islamic state. If now Taliban themselves establish Islam, we're going to see it's a prosperity and justice for the whole world. Yes,
you accept the cutting off of hands and the...
Yes, that is Islamic law, and that is itself, a punishment according to Islamic law. Islam is a political faith as well as a spiritual faith.
Now, do you see this as something which is basically an Afghan story, or do you think it has implications beyond this remote country?
On one level, of course, it's a local Afghan story. And I see the Taliban as a symptom of this general chaos and decline in that country. But on a wider level, yes, it has got significance because although I think there is no place in the modern world for states based on religious law, and that's why, for example, Israel is such an anachronism, really, the fact is that political Islam, which is, by the way, very variegated, I mean, it's not a monolithic movement, is nevertheless a very important force, and it's moving and it's spreading, and there are reasons for that. Now, the way I would see this is to inquire, why is political Islam important? Why this Islamic militancy? Why these Islamic movements? And of course, that's very relevant. My friend here mentioned the situation in the occupied territories. It's very relevant to the Palestinians who have their own Islamist movements, which stand for a particular ideology.
But are they likely to be infected with the extraordinary fundamentalism that is demonstrated by the Taliban?
No, most Islamism is not fundamentalist and severe and extreme. Most of it is much more akin to the kind of piety that most Muslims feel.
But you very much hope it will be infected with it.
Of course, because the Islamic State will be the political leadership for the whole Muslim worldwide. The Khilafah, going to be established in Afghanistan, will support the Muslims and Mujahideen to liberate their own homeland in Kashmir, in Bosnia and Palestine, and even will remove all the government in Arab regimes.
In a sense, you would like it so infected that you wouldn't be able to conduct this conversation across this table
with
Dr. Karmi outside a veil.
We can discuss these issues. Islam, give you the right to speak and give you the right as well to express your views within the boundary of the law.
But if the Taliban infection spreads as you want it to, you wouldn't have her sitting here.
Why not? She can speak. The only question, there is Islamic, code. If she is Muslim, it's safe to practice.
But you'd have her back in the veil.
The issue of the veil itself, not for non-Muslim. And if she is a Muslim,
the Taliban today have banned women from offices. They have said they are to cover up.
Actually, what they said we want to establish segregation between male and female, and they want themselves to establish a particular Islamic code, and that itself what people believe on it.
Yeah, but come on. The reality is the Taliban, for example, would forbid women to be educated. Now, you know very well that it is. No, let me speak. It is fundamental in Islam that education is incumbent on male and female.
I think you try to make analogy to existing regimes in Muslims' country. Islamic State, provide education for male and female, provides, complete security for Muslim and non-Muslims. I think this is stereotype and Islamophobia against Islam. We should forget it.
No. I mean, really, one mustn't accuse a Muslim of Islamophobia. But let me just say, the thing I was talking about, that in the modern world, we have to deal with modern reality. And religions, however interesting and however valuable, cannot by themselves deal with the problems of the modern world. And interesting enough, Islamic states like Iran already recognize this. If you go to Iran now, you can see that modernism
I think we know
has
very
taken
well.
place.
I know very well. States like Iran or Saudi Arabia or Iraq or Sudan, they did not implement Islam. And I hope Taliban, they will fulfill their own promise and will establish the Khilafah.
Sheikh Omar, Dr. Karmi, thank you both very much indeed.